Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Conquer001. Welcome back. And as you can see, we have Mr. Aichi Sando's sister, Amy Sando. They're greeting us, all four of them. But of course, what this video is about is a deck review of one of my decks. Now, in this particular case, our theme for today is Nova Grapplers. So without further ado, let's get things show on the road. First up, we have ourselves these guys. Run right over here. Come on. There we go. So we have 4 standard, 4 basic, or rather a pretty much equal number of triggers here. We got 4 stands, 4 heals, 4 draws, and 4 crits. Now, our starting Vanguard is the Battle Riser, a single R card from BT01, and as you can tell, it's shiny, and this card is awesome. It comes with a both plus and minus effect. Of course, you use it as a booster, get an additional 3,000 power to its boosting power, and then at the end of the turn, shuffle it back to the deck. So essentially, you are removing a 10k guard from your hand, but you can still shuffle it back into your deck and hopefully, draw out during a trigger check and standing one of your rear guards and attacking again. But I suppose you already know the gist of it. Now, the criticals itself is actually quite a good surprise attack, I suppose, because the opponent will be kind of like forces to make a decision. Oh, should I actually guard it or should I not? Because sometimes they say, you know what, I choose not to guard it, and whether if it's a stand or a critical trigger comes out, it can actually throw the initial plants into a disarray. And besides, it does come with an additional effect that I can actually unflip damages. Let's zoom in though. There we go. Unflip damages are putting this into Soul, which there is a particular card in this deck build that will benefit from this particular effect. So let's put this by the side. Oopsie. And we move on to grade 1. So grade 1, we have 4 Death Army guys, 3 Queen of Hearts, 3 Perfect Guards, 3 Dancing Wolves, and 1 Screaming and Dancing Announcer Shout. Now let me just run you through by this. Currently, as it is right now, the English version for Nova Grapplers, we are lacking really far behind with the Japanese community. But generally, I feel that this particular setup is quite interesting and can prove to be very, very challenging for the player for the opponent to decide what to do. And at the same time, it also provides an additional depth of versatility for us as Nova Grappler players. So naturally, I'm going with 4 copies of Death Army Guy to give me maximum standing power, which is to be used in tandem with Death Army Lady. And this card can also be used together with Kirara or any other grade 2 or grade 3 cards if you manage to stand them. So essentially, this card is it's actually pretty good, really. And as some of you might already guess, I do have King of Sword for the grade 2, which is also why I have the Queen of Hearts in my deck itself. It will form a really nice 20k line to hit the opponent with, therefore really putting a lot of pressure on them, and not to mention making the King of Hearts as something like a lightning rod, therefore trying to prompt and even entice the opponent to try to hit them while potentially keeping your Vanguard alive. And of course, I will go with 3 Perfect Guards. Nothing much to be said. I'm actually also going with 3 Dancing Wolves. Now, initially, I actually have 4 Shouts. The reason why that I initially have 4 Shouts is because in the event that I do have any cards that I don't want, like excess grade 3s and stuff like that, rest this, drop the grade 3, draw another card. So in a sense, these shout is quite important. But with the introduction of the Dancing Wolf, it will be very interesting to use it together with the Death Army guy or Death Army lady. And if you manage to put either one above, sort of like for example, your hand isn't really all that great, you can actually put it like so, right? And then maybe say Azura Kaiser as the Vanguard, review grade 3, bam, this stance as well. You are essentially now attacking 17k just like that. Initially it's like 14, and then 3 when you stand again, 17k, bam. And even if you don't get the grade 3, let's say you manage to get a stand trigger, right? This stands 2, an additional 3k. Now some of you might know this or not, I'm not too sure, but it was definitely recently clarified by Bushiro, is that Dancing Wolf, right, despite the fact that it might have okay, let's say for example this is the Vanguard, you attack it boosted by Dancing Wolf itself, therefore forming a in this case 13k attack towards the enemy. And let's say the opponent the opponent has a Vanguard of let's say 7, right, and then guards it with 10k. Alright, therefore effectively putting in 17k. All you need is just 1 trigger to go. Okay, maybe 17 is not that good of an example, but essentially what I mean to say is that if there is a time where you really need the number to go through and 1 trigger is just not enough, but if that trigger check is a stand trigger, you can effectively stand this again, right? And it is confirmed once you stand Dancing Wolf, you add it will add to the overall attacking power by 3,000 points, so that therefore effectively putting my 13 up to 16. And then let's say if it's a stand trigger, bam, 16 plus 5, 21, effectively turning this line into a 21 sweet spot. So this card very useful both for the rear guard and the Vanguard line. So let me put this aside, and we move on to the grade 2, like so. So Death Army Lady 4 copies, King of Sword 4 copies, and 3 Magician Girl Kirara. Now I've already explained regarding about Death Army Lady and Death Army Guy, but Kirara is essentially the only card in the entire deck that will use the counter blasts. And since no other cards will be using the counter blast, might as well have a Kirara use it. So and furthermore, it puts in tremendous amount of pressure on the opponent, and which you can actually attack at the Vanguard or the rear guard, irregardless. So they will have to retire a card, or they will have to put a card to the damage zone, and you have the chance to actually counterblast 2 and then draw a card, effectively increasing your hand. Not to mention, if you manage to stand this again, and if you have enough counterblasts, or if the first initial attack was initially blocked, you can attack again, forcing the opponent to drop even more cards because they just don't want you to get an additional card into your hand. So standing is very, very crucial here, and I feel that Kirara manages to bring that point across. And finally, the grade 3. We have 4 Azura Kaisers, our good friend, a very consistent and a loyal member of the Nova Grapplers. We also have 4 copies of the Beast Deity Azure Dragon. Definitely a crossroad coming soon, which I'm really looking forward to in BT09. And in all ball, we have the Armored Fairy Shubiela. Yeah, I hope I got that right. So effectively, it is like Kirara, but its costs. It's not based on counter blasts, but on soul blasts. So this works relatively well if you need to ride grade 3s on top of like the previous grade 3 to make use of it in its effect. So the ideal setup that I would actually go for is that hopefully I can get the Azura Kaiser into my hand, ride it as the main Vanguard, and then let's say I need to flip the damage, so maybe I soul charge this guy, go in, and so effectively I still got the grade 1 and the grade 2, so effectively having a total charge of 3 souls in under my Vanguard, and then I will call Shubiela and maybe say Kirara Let me just put the Kira right over here. Now, effectively, now I can actually force my opponents to really consider that, oh crap, you know, he's now forcing me to give him a card. And this kind of setup really puts a lot of pressure on the opponent, despite the fact that the line itself being produced isn't exactly very big. So most of the time you could say, oh, you know what, yeah, sure, I could block it for a 5 or a 10k initially, but then later on, if I do manage to stand these units up again, they have to actually pay more cards to actually stop those attacks. So it's like, should I actually stop it, or sacrifice one of my rear guards, or take the attack to my Vanguard and then let him draw? So essentially this I feel that this deck itself really puts a lot of pressure on the opponents, despite the fact that it's a power lines. It's mostly on like 16 to like 16 to 20 at best, you know, so or even 21 at best. So there you have it. This is my English build of Nova Grapplers with Ashura Kaiser, Kirara, Shubela, Geo Dragon, and pretty much the only 2 types of Death Army units out there. So I'm really looking forward to the release of EBO4, aka the advent of the Death Army units. Mr. Death Army Cosmo Lord, I tested that online using a virtual deck, and I must say it is wonderful. I really enjoy that particular build, and I really look forward to it. But so far, this particular deck, I feel that it actually brings a lot of interesting plays to the opponent and to myself, of course, and I hope you enjoy it. So look forward to my next deck review.